Hello, you. I couldn't help but notice. When you walked in, you were like a scene stolen from my darkest daydreams. An effortless blend of vulnerability and a quiet strength that both unraveled and enticed me. For a fleeting moment, I imagined you as the muse to a story I had long been writing. A narrative so intricate that even I, with all of my twisted justifications, might pause to admire your beauty. But let's be honest, in my world, beauty is simply the prelude to chaos. So, you, dear listener, settle in and join me. Let's unravel this deliciously twisted tapestry together, where every secret, every shadow, and every whispered promise of change is laced with just the right amount of darkness that will keep us both laughing and wondering if we were ever truly free of our own haunting obsessions. Hello and welcome all of my fellow totally normal fans of psychological thrillers. Welcome to Loot, Lore, and Lights, where we break down books, video games, and cinema that makes us question our own moral compass. Today, we're talking about You, Season 5. Joe Goldberg, he's been through it all. The bookstore romantic, the suburban family man, the English professor who probably shouldn't be left alone with a syllabus. This time, he's got power, he's got wealth, and he's got stability. We all know that is absolutely the worst thing that could happen for a guy like Joe Goldberg. So let's get started. We're going to talk about how right at the beginning, Joe has kind of started, I guess what you might look at as a little bit of a redemption arc that we know is going to be fake. He's got Kate, his now very rich, and you'll find out a little bit later, I guess, oblivious partner, and she's convinced that he's sworn off his old ways. And, they're starting this new life together where they're both going to be good. But for Joe, it's exactly the opposite of that. Joe is your raccoon outside that's promising not to dig through your trash. You probably shouldn't leave it open, but you do it anyway, and you can see the mess that unfolds afterwards. It doesn't take very long. You do see right off the bat that he has his son, and you would think that would help a man change. And I guess before I go too much further, if you haven't finished watching You Season 5, subscribe, but stop right now and come back and listen to this once you're done. But he has this, at least early on, this thing of he and his wife are changing. They're going to be doing all of these things to help the community. They're trying to get rid of their dark past to move on to be something better. That pretty much halts early on when, Buffalo Bob is Joe's first reintroduction into his serial ways. And you find out that he is now taken to writing stories based around his inner demons. And this is just, number one, a terrible thing to do, especially if you're, serial killing people. And that's what he is, right? Like, he kept trophies, and that's like a big sign. His, body count throughout the season, it's stacking up like IKEA furniture in the corner, if you want to look at it that way. Like, it's getting bad. He, ends up meeting his new love interest for this season, which is Bronte. And if we talk about that for a second, to me, she was my least favorite of Joe's love interests. She wasn't, I don't know what it was exactly. There just wasn't a whole lot about her to me that really pulled me in. And I saw where they were trying to go with it. And, it came right back to, trying to pull her into being a writer, which is more Joe's world. And I just wasn't there for it. Even when they tried to throw the backstory in later, tying her in with Guinevere Beck, and how, Nikki, Dr. Nikki from season 1, his son that they're basically like this vigilante group that's out for justice for Beck and Dr. Nikki. And yeah, I was not feeling it with Bronte. To me, she was my least favorite love interest. I will say, I do think after everything that happened last season and even some of the stuff earlier on with Bronte where he's almost feeling justified in the terrible acts that he's committing, I think if he would have met Love Quinn at that point in his life, like, he would have been perfect because she matched his crazy. And I think it's funny that, back in seasons 2 and 3 with Love, that somebody matched his crazy and he was like, I got to check out of this. Like, this is not for me. So he literally looked at himself in a mirror with Love and was not there for it. Yet, as we get further into this season, he is starting to accept himself, starting to accept who he is and what he is doing to satisfy this other side of himself. And I think if he would have met Love at that point, it would have probably been a match made in heaven. It would have been perfect. But, of course, like everything else, she's another, body count for him that's stacked in the corner. So he became really unlikable this season. I was not a fan because of the way that they tried to pull Kate. And let's be honest, like, they tried to, in the beginning, pull in this random cast of characters from Kate's side to make Joe seem somewhat likable because of how unlikable everybody else was. But it didn't work for me. And to me, this was the weakest season for you. And I wasn't as big of a fan as I thought I would be. Not to say that I wouldn't recommend it. If you've watched the first 4 seasons of you do need to see how it ends. So, don't stop, finish the season, but to me, it was just the weakest. I guess there were a couple bright spots this season. And number one, like, let's be honest, it's Anna Camp, right? Like, she played Reagan Lockwood and Maddie Lockwood, polar opposite characters of each other. You've got cutthroat, like, evil bitch Reagan Lockwood, who is CFO for Lockwood Corp. And then you've got Maddie, who's been divorced multiple times. She's PR for Lockwood, and she's a manipulator, but she's very, soft around the edges, whereas Reagan is very sharp. And Anna Camp played both of those roles magnificently to me. Like, she killed it. Like, you could buy that they were 2 different characters. And I love the way that they tried to pull the switcheroo, which, you could see it coming once all the stuff happened with Reagan's wife, Harrison, and it pulls in the whole love story of Maddie. And, she was a surrogate mom for Reagan, and she and Harrison really were in love with each other. And it almost played out like it was going to be fine, right? Like, they almost pulled that one off, and I guess ultimately in the end it kind of did, but it's like, she was the bright spot for me. Like, I really liked the way Anna Camp played those characters. Teddy, I think it was Griffin Matthews played Teddy, and he was a really likable character as well, as kind of like the bastard son who is now being brought back into the company. And it was nice to see his very short-lived character arc, eventually become CEO and grow that company in a more positive direction, as opposed to what they're, and when I say they're, I mean like the children's, like Kate and Reagan and Maddie, like their father taking it in a much, really, I guess you could say, capitalistic direction. Like, it didn't matter who they had to step on to get their way, they were going to do it. And to me, that's what Buffalo Bob was going to do as well before Joe, checked him out of the show. Joe is haunted by literal demons throughout this last season. Not literal demons, I guess literal ghosts of his past. You have ties back to Guinevere Beck. You have little cameos later on from like Dottie Quinn. You even see Paco. You see Ethan. You see man, I can't even remember all of them that had like this little say of, I guess, in response to what was going on with Joe, and when they started bringing to the forefront everything that happened. To me, it was a little bit of a drug out season. I think it probably could have ended a little bit earlier, but it is what it is. I'm glad they wrapped it up. I don't know that it ended the way, like, I guess me personally, I did not think Joe was going to live till the end of the season. So I guess that was a little bit different. I didn't expect him to just, Bronte to lead him to be arrested. And I thought it was funny because you hear these stories all the time about people idolizing serial killers. How, even in the end, when Joe's sitting in his jail cell, he's reading letters from fans of his who just think that he is still adorable. Like, he's still the Prince Charming that he was in the beginning of the season. And people are crazy, man. Like, the weirdest part is that, like, that is a true thing. Like, that stuff happens. People idolize these really just monsters who are capable of the darkest things. And that's, it was nice to see once he was in the jail cell that they did reflect back on that and they brought that piece in, because that is, it's true to life. Like, that is what happens. It's going to be, I guess, a little bit, over, right? But is it really over? I mean, they kind of left it a little bit ambiguous enough that something else could come out of it. I don't remember exactly what the last book that he was reading, but it alludes to that he is facing execution, right? I don't know. To me, this was kind of the weakest season, and I do think it was because some of the supporting cast, they were not strong characters. They were kind of, I don't want to say like oblivious, but really they kind of were just oblivious. I thought that it was interesting to see Joe trying to risk it all for his son, because this is the same son that he did abandon earlier on. So maybe there is some growth, I guess, as a person there, since he's gotten to spend time with him, that he didn't want to just up and abandon him again. Like, he wanted to go see him that last time. And really, that's probably what led to him being caught and allowing Bronte to stop him. But yeah, to me, it just, I don't know. It was, to me, my least favorite season of You, I think. I really believe that a lot of that, too, came from the direction that the writing was there towards the end. It didn't really leave us in that state of, are we pulling for redemption or an inevitable collapse of this character? Because they just really made him, like, unlikable as we got further into the show, to the point where you're like, I hope he doesn't get away with it. Something's got to happen. Like, it became so telling too, just the way he was so upfront about it, that he was accepting the monster, and he was, to me, just like, he wanted to be like I shouldn't say that, but like, really the character itself to me was like a weaker, horny Dexter, getting into the seasons where Dexter and his sister start loving each other. So yeah, all in all, like I said, this was the weaker season for me. I am kind of glad that it's over now. I don't know how much more you could go with this character. I'm leery about, even with Dexter coming back, like, what more can you do? Like, it's crazy. But I'm curious as to your takeaway. So do you think that Joe got what he deserved? Do you think it should have ended a little bit differently? Leave comments. Like I said, subscribe. Let's have this conversation together. And, if you got any crazy fan theories, please leave them. Promise that I won't turn into Joe and stalk you too much. Other than that, though, if your vision of morality is as conflicted as Joe's latest diary entry, subscribe, join the conversation. I will take just a moment too, as well, to mention that we are now sponsored, or partners, I guess, with Dubby Energy Mix. So go to wdubby.gg, use promo code Loot, Lore, and Lights to get 10% off of your order. It also helps the channel. There will be a link down in the description that you don't even have to enter the promo code. We have some other things coming up. I've got Elden Ring Night Rain coming out soon, so we'll probably do an episode talking about that. I will likely have Gerald and possibly Rob on for that one. We'll see. We're excited to dive back into that world. And I have another quick review coming out for the Netflix series 4 Seasons, which we just finished. And other than that, we're going to wrap up, and we'll have, I think, 2 more Last of Us episode reactions for this season. We'll have episodes 6 and 7 coming right after they air. Maybe do a follow-up afterwards for some kind of a group discussion. And yeah, the only way that you will be able to maintain the presence with this channel is to subscribe. I do try to post at least once a week, but that way, if you hit the bell, you'll be notified of any posts that we have, or if you follow it on any of the major podcasting suppliers, you'll be notified of any posts that we have. I'm glad that you guys took the time out of your day to hear me talk about You Season 5. It is a very dark world that Joe lives in, and he is obviously the main character, and it's okay to get away with all these things, but in reality, it finally caught up to him. Again, least favorite season for me of You. If it's different for you, leave a comment, let me know, let's talk about it. The signal is weak, but the stories are strong. Take care.